Sheriff, this is no time to panic. This is the perfect time to panic!
The Panic of 1893 was probably the worst economic depression in the history of the United States prior to the Great Depression. The panic was so far-reaching because of how the regional economies became much more connected during the late 19th century. This was because of major advances in shipping and communication technology, such as the train and the telegraph. Because of this new national economy, people in the Northeast, the Midwest, and the South were all greatly affected by the Depression. This had never happened before in the history of the country. People in different parts of the country faced different challenges due to the panic, especially farmers. Farmers in the Midwest went into tenancy at a much higher rate because banks saw investing into agriculture as highly risky. In the South, farmers typically farmed cotton, so when the price of it dropped significantly, many farmers in the South began having trouble paying off their debts. This led them to go into tenancy as well. Because the economy was so turbulent, around 20% of the nation was unemployed at the peak of the Depression. Harsh cuts in pay also occurred because of the struggling economy. These pay cuts caused many violent strikes across the nation. Because of these strikes, many private companies asked for the government's aid in dealing with them. This caused tragic events such as the Pullman strike, which led to the death of 13 civilians as well as countless more injured. There were many events that occurred which led to the panic. First, the U.S. Treasury's gold reserves were running extremely low. This led to investors selling off stocks in corporations, especially railroads, to convert into gold investments, which were much more lucrative at the time. This led to around 25% of railroads to go broke by the end of the panic in 1897. This made it much harder for many civilians to ship their goods. Because of this crisis, many began to call in loans because people were pulling out money. Because of this, many banks began to run out of money, which led to over 4,000 banks closing by 1894. The panic also had far-reaching effects in other areas than just the economy. For example, monetary policy was one of the biggest issues in the 1896 election, which was one of the most influential of all time.
So how did the United States recover from this panic? Well, the ultimate solution to the panic was found by J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan, with the help of bankers, came up with an idea to invest gold right into the government, thereby replenishing the gold reserves. However, this plan was swiftly rejected by President Grover Cleveland. J.P. Morgan then met with Cleveland and discovered there was only $9 million worth of gold in the reserves, which was far less than the money the government owed. So J.P. Morgan had to find another quick solution to the issue. J.P. Morgan's plan was that he had discovered a still valid law from the Civil War that allowed the Treasury to buy gold. It was the loophole needed to circumvent Congress and allow the Treasury to go through with Morgan's plan, which involved buying back gold from foreign investors. President Cleveland finally agreed. Within days, the flow of gold began to run back into the Treasury, completely halting the financial crisis. There were many reasons why the United States ultimately came out of the Depression. One was that many other countries were facing agricultural disasters, which led to a boom in American agriculture, which was important because it was one of the hardest hit sectors. Another reason why it ended was the discovery of gold in the Klondike region of northwestern Canada. The Depression eventually ended in 1897, but it left a lasting mark on the people of the United States. The people had now realized that the reforms they had put into place only a few years earlier were not enough to protect the working class, so many people voted for Republicans who pushed for these regulations in the following years. The Panic of 1893 is where the Populist Party began to grow as a political power. Populists were starting to be represented by senators, representatives, and legislatures. In the election of 1896, a member of the Populist Party, William Jennings Bryan, was nominated as the candidate to run for president.